Yeah, best I can do.
Well, we're live here tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. It's Joe Chaffee, Joe Rayo, and I'm thinking from Gilligan's Island, perhaps. It
That's
is
right.
it is meteorologist Bill Goodman from the National Weather Service in Upton, New York. And if you've never been to downtown Upton, it's quite the place. It's right. Actually, it's here in central Long Island. It's only about what it was about 15 miles from here, right?
That sounds
I
about right.
never clocked it. It's 15 miles.
That's about right.
Yeah. All right. Well, that works. Okay, so we have we have the hurricane that no one wants to try to pronounce. Isaias or Isaias, depending on who you go with. I think those are the two acceptable ones. I like mine because it's one syllable shorter, but whichever
Well,
one it is.
didn't they have a show, a song many years ago, Love Potion Number 9?
Yes, they
So
did.
why don't we just say Tropical Cyclone Number 9?
Number nine. Well, but
Yeah.
let's. By the way, what I know when they do the name lists, it's not just the U.S. the United States, but it's all the countries and cultures throughout the Atlantic Basin that have their meteorological offices that all have a hand in
Yeah.
making up the name list. So just to explain it to everybody, they it's this is what's the word I'm looking for? But a conglomeration of bureaucracies that come together so that all the countries are represented. So that's why we have names that are of different cultures. Okay, so our tropical storm became a hurricane. It moved off the Dominican Republic. Couple of things, and I'll throw this out to both of you, and you can let me have your thoughts. The southern half of this storm was on land over the Dominican Republic and seems to have been taken apart to a certain extent because when I was looking at some of the recons from earlier, there was in terms of wind, there was very little wind on the south side, and I just wonder whether that impact is going to perhaps inhibit some strengthening while we have this window open between now and say tomorrow evening as it approaches Florida before the shear starts to get involved. Uh, Bill, you go first.
I know in some of the Hurricane Center discussions, they talked about downslope flow from the mountains that basically warms and dries the air as it descends from the mountains, and that that did a number on the southern half of circulation. So the farther away it gets from Hispaniola, the more, the better opportunity that has to repair itself before before interacting with Florida, let's say.
Joe, what do you
We were
think?
just we were talking last night about the fact, Joe, that based upon yesterday, the information that the Hurricane Center put out, this was not supposed to reach hurricane force strength until sometime late tonight. So I did a double take when I saw that at midnight last night. They said, "Oh, it's a hurricane now." That's a full 24 hours ahead of schedule.
Yeah,
And
the only thing I would say to that is that when you look at the pressure, the lowest pressure, usually when you get to the minimal hurricane, your pressures are down in the low 980s. But the pressures last night were in the low 990s, 994, 995. There was the plane has been reporting strong winds all along in the northeast quadrant and then on the northern side of the storm. I don't know. I just the there's some distortions I think that are going on here meteorologically with this particular storm that you're getting these really strong gusty winds, but the pressures are not quite as low as what they normally would be with a minimal hurricane.
Yeah, I think the recon just got lucky and sampled a little bit of hurricane force wind. And it's almost like in football, you get the ball over the plane of the goal line, it's a touchdown, and it's almost like that sort of thing. And then later on, things backed off a little bit, and I haven't seen the latest recon. Probably supports minimal hurricane intensity.
And now they're talking about the fact that a very small eye is beginning to develop, at least at the mid levels, maybe only about 10 miles across, but still, that usually is the signal that the storm is beginning to wind up or crank up, so to speak. And just like the analogy I've seen more often than anything else, the ice skater spinning around, the faster that he or she is spinning. Well, now this system is beginning to spin up. It's only 75 mph now, but you're right, Joe. In the next 24 hours, it's going to have a window to intensify even more before it maybe runs into some kind of a southwesterly shear, which may cut it down again during the upcoming weekend.
All right, I'm going to bring up the recon. I have it here, so let's take a look. There's a plane in there even as we speak, and it's making its first pass. It hasn't closed off a center yet, so I'll bring it up on the screen for everybody to see as soon as I get my handle on all the technical stuff I have to do, switching back and forth. By the way, welcome to everybody on the chat board tonight. Welcome to any of our new viewers or listeners, because this show is also available as a podcast, or at least it will be about an hour after the live stream is over. So welcome to the show. So this is from Tropical Tidbits, which is your go-to site, in my never to be humble opinion, for weather models and all sorts of weather information, including reconnaissance aircraft reports, which Levi has them plotted on a map, Bill, and I'm just looking here. I see a couple of wind barbs that fall into the range of 64 to 83 knots. Looks like they're about a full, almost 50 miles northeast of the center. On the flight that they did on the inbound or the outbound. They came in from the west southwest, and the winds really didn't pick up. You get some gales, maybe about 30 or 40 miles from the center on the south side, and then of course you've got the gales that extend pretty far out on the north side, from the center being up close to 23. And they go up almost about good 60 or 70 miles. It's a compact system. This is not a big system in my view.
Well, a compact system with a compact eye. They were.
Yeah, I mean, this is a smallish cyclone. It's not a big hurricane.
No,
that may actually play into to help us out when this thing goes north. Although I don't know, as it heads north, it may actually begin to increase in forward speed again. And I don't know whether or not, as it does head north along, let's say, the Atlantic coast, that would cause the breadth of the storm, the width of the storm to increase, in the wind field too. So we'll see how that plays in to how it's going to affect the tri-state area, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday.
I'm going to bring up a full U.S. loop here, and there are a couple of questions that I think we should address. So, looking at the structure of this, and by the way, as I always say, for those of you who are watching, when it comes to tropical storms or hurricanes or severe weather, your go-to place is your local National Weather Service office for the best weather information, and you can access that by going to weather.gov. And of course, decisions with hurricanes should be done with consultations with your local officials where you live, and the National Hurricane Center, and that website is nhc.noaa.gov. So I've got the full loop up, and it's really interesting here how many players we have in the upper atmosphere that are involved in the track of this thing, because you've got the skinny ridge that is in between the clouds that are off our coastline now from that little disturbance that went by early this morning and woke me up at 4 a.m. You've got the ridge that's in between that, and of course you have Isaias or Isaias, and the well-defined shortwave trough, Bill, that is swinging into the middle Mississippi Valley. And you can't see it yet, but there's the next arm that's coming down in Canada that's going to phase with this. And I'm trying to remember the last time I've seen a full latitude trough running from the Great Lakes to the Louisiana Gulf Coast at the very beginning of the month of August. That's a very amplified trough for this time of year.
I would think so, especially the way it's forming. I mean, we will get troughs like that, but they usually tend to cut off more than the way this thing is developing. So yeah, pretty pretty unusual.
And you would agree with the idea that it's this sort of delicate balance between the strength of the ridge offshore, the strength of the hurricane, and the amplitude of this trough that's ultimately going to develop the track, where the track is going to be along the East Coast. And we have seen this sort of, every run of model guidance that we've had for the last few days has been nudging a little bit further left, a little bit further left, to the point now where most of the model track guidance is actually either barely offshore or actually onshore all the way up the eastern seaboard.
It's going to be interesting to see how this is all going to pan out over the next couple of days because, as I mentioned on my own hurricane update a couple hours ago on Joe Rayo Weather YouTube channel there, we have the GFS and the parallel GFS all waving red flags that this thing is going to be right in our own backyard by Tuesday morning. And yet you have and I'm making the quote mark sign here with my fingers, the king, the European model, and the European model is about 20 to 22 hours behind the GFS. They still have it down over the Carolinas on Tuesday morning, and they don't swing it past us until sometime around daybreak on Wednesday. So the first thing we have to nail down here
is the timing.
Maybe not so much the track, but the timing. When this thing going to get up into our latitude early next week?
Bill, is that timing issue, you think, because of the fact that the European seems to take the storm inland in Florida a bit more than the other models and keeps it mostly inland on its track all the way up?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, that'd lead to a somewhat weaker storm, and something would move a little bit slower. And then you have the GFS, which has a bias of being off to the races as it is. So the answer,
and that has been the last couple of runs has actually slowed down a lot, taking a little longer on every run. But the GFS has it over with at New York City by 8 a.m. on Tuesday. Okay, it's done pretty much.
I don't think it's
and the European doesn't even have it started yet at 8 a.m. Tuesday.
Yeah, it's crazy. You try to make a shift schedule to handle everything that's going to go on with this hurricane at the National Weather Service, and it's impossible. We have to have a contingency for the contingency because we don't know. The answer is probably somewhere in between. The European's notoriously slow, GFS notoriously fast, and just gotta pick somewhere in the middle and hope that answer's right too.
All right, the model track guidance, the 18Z model track guidance looks fairly well clustered. This has had an compared to the global models, Bill, this has had an eastward bias all along, and it still does, although it also has come in a bit to the west on each run.
Yeah, I noticed that. I think was it last night or the night before we were talking about that difference. The globals are off to the left, and all this other guidance is off to the right. I'm kind of siding with something a little bit more to the left. It's almost like you're playing the same game you play with winter storms. The south, whoever's got the more north and west bias is probably closer to reality.
All three of us agree that this is, at this stage, this is Friday 31st. We're all in agreement at this point that this is going to come up the East Coast, correct?
Oh, I was thinking actually we was going to reach Hatteras and then make that right-hand turn toward Bermuda and then go up to Nova Scotia.
I should have never showed you. I should have never showed you that run of the GFS. You've been harping on that all week. I don't know if you saw this, Bill, but this is back days and days and days ago when this was still in its formative processes in the long range. And there was one run of the GFS that we have the parallel GFS. Well, this was the perpendicular GFS because it brought it up much like it you see here. It brought it up to Hatteras, and then all of a sudden it just shot it straight east from Hatteras to about 64, 63 west, and then it turned it and moved it straight north into Nova Scotia, and it made this ridiculous 90-degree angle in terms of the track. It was just so ridiculous. But the three of us do agree at this point. It's safe to say that this is coming up the coast, and the it's going to be the actual the super short range questions that we're not going to be able to get to until maybe Monday in terms of what to expect out of this. I have to tell you, and I'm going to, maybe I'm committing a meteorological blunder here, or perhaps putting myself forecast wise on the edge of the cliff. But looking at what I'm seeing with this, and of course and I'm not going to, we don't name names on this show, but I did happen to see someone who's known, who has this as a category 3 hurricane. He has it as a category 3 hurricane going into the Carolinas. You know what, his forecast is fine until if and when it happens. So I'm not going to criticize that per se, but in my opinion, from what I'm seeing, I think for us, this is going to should be manageable. I mean, maybe I'm jumping the gun too early, but from what I'm seeing here, this should be manageable.
Well,
Well,
in one sense, yes, that it's coming up this way. In another sense, no, because what usually happens is with storms accelerating up the coast, most of the wind ends up east of the track. Most of the rain ends up left to the west of it.
Right.
Where's that line going to be? I wouldn't,
Well, if we're talking about, if we do have a low that straddles the New Jersey coast, it's like Faye. It'll be like Faye was back a few weeks ago. All the rain was from coastal New Jersey, westernmost Long Island westward, okay, and there was very little in terms of rain eastward. And in fact, while it got breezy out here, and maybe there were some gusts up into the 40s, that was that. I mean, I think this will be more than that as far as wind. And I agree with you. The rain shield is going to, as always, when they move up at this latitude up here, they start to accelerate. Yes, the rain shield goes on the west side, but oftentimes when we have these tropical systems, there is this tendency for taking things to their Armageddon conclusion. And I guess what I'm getting at is, we're not looking at a category 5 here that's barreling up toward Florida, that we're staring a major hurricane. At least from what I'm seeing, I don't think we're going to get to that point as far as getting this up to a category 2 or a category 3 hurricane.
well, I
Well,
could remember, I could remember two storms. One was Hugo, and the other was David, and those two storms passed well a ways to the west of the tri-state area, and yet
Well,
they had
Hugo did nothing here.
well, I don't know.
Hugo did very little here. I mean, we had some wind out of it, but it wasn't any. It wasn't
Wind.
any.
What I'm alluding to it with Hugo is I could remember I was living in Levittown back then, and my wife and I, we were awakened by the fact that it got, maybe it was very short of time, but we got some very strong winds. The side door of our house, the screen door, was just opening and closing back and forth, like slamming back and forth. And meanwhile, it was pretty windy. Now, that was what Hugo did. It was mainly more wind than anything else.
Right, it was south winds and swinging street lights and that kind of thing. but as far as rain was concerned, we got very little rain out of it, because anytime they go west of the Appalachians, we don't really have the rain issue here.
Well,
Okay.
David was different. Then David had, we actually went under a tornado watch. We had lots of convection, showery rains, heavy rains, strong gusty winds. I think it was a bit closer to us than where Hugo ended up relative to us. But what I did yesterday, Joe, I think I mentioned this on the show last night, is I looked back over about 60 or 70 years of hurricane tracks, trying to find something that was similar to what we're looking at for the next few days, curving along the Atlantic seaboard. Found 8 different tropical cyclones dating back to the 1940s. And then what I did was I went into the archives of the New York Times and looked at the news articles that came in the aftermath of each one of these storms, just to see what this particular storm coming up might be capable of doing. And I got to tell you, first of all, 1944, that was the year of the Great Atlantic Hurricane. They didn't have names back then. The Times described it as lashed by, this is for the New York area now, lashed by drenching rain, turned into sheets of spray by gusts of wind. 1953, driving rain, a churning storm, gale winds. In 54, we had two storms that took this kind of a track within 10 days of each other, August 31st and September 10th. Pelting rain, torrential rains. In fact, that second storm in 54, 5 inches of rain in one day, the heaviest one-day total that they had dating back to 1909. Out of the 8, only 2 managed to miss hitting us hard. One of them was Hurricane Gerda, which you talk about a compact storm. Gerda had winds of 140 miles per hour, and it came up the coast, but I guess it was so compressed or compact that we really didn't see very much of it at all. And in fact, it just barely missed nailing Cape Cod with 140-mile-an-hour winds. But that was like an exception to the rule. So what I've been telling people is for next week, be it Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever, just prepare for the worst and hope for the best, because this could very well mean heavy rains, strong gusty winds, maybe some power lines going down. Some folks may lose power with this. We've got the full moon on Monday. The worst of the tidal situation would be Tuesday or Wednesday. So that means coastal flooding, possibly beach erosion. And I'm just sad because to this moment in time, I don't know how Bill feels about this working for the National Weather Service, but I feel this has been getting short shrift, that because of all the COVID stuff and everything else, that everybody's, and they're looking at this and they're saying, oh, Florida's going to get that. Oh, it's a Puerto Rico got it. Not even realizing that this thing is going to be up here probably Tuesday or Wednesday of next week.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Well, now we have the weekend to straighten that situation out. So we got some time now that without any weekday distractions. Let's take the most of it.
Well, our regulars have known about this for days and days and days now. So we certainly, as always here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, we step up to the front and we stay ahead of the curve.
You think Alan is watching right now?
I'm sorry. Do I think what?
You think Alan is watching?
He might, Rabbit. He might be watching. Yes. I did speak to him this morning. He did watch the show the other night. And he was.
Tell you something about it. If Alan is watching, Alan, we miss you so much, because the people who present weather now, and also the news anchors, I could remember now if this were today, if Alan were still on the air and we had the late great Jim Jensen doing the news anchoring at CBS or whatever, Alan would make, I think, more than just a passing glance at this and would point out that, hey, this is something that we're going to have to watch. Or as Alan used to like to say, remember this, Joe? There's going to be trouble in River City. Remember?
Yes.
Have you ever heard of that? And he'd throw it back to Jim Jensen, and Jensen would probably look at Alan with that look like, so you really think this is going to be something very serious for us? And Alan would say, well, it's possible, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, we'll have to watch that very carefully. Thank you, Mr. Jasper. Now, tonight, I watched a TV station where the weathercaster came on, the Puerto Rico and this and that, Florida, and this might come up the coast and give us some rain Tuesday or Wednesday. So back to you, so-and-so. And whoever was behind the desk said, thank you very much. And we'll be back. We're going to have this story now. It just glossed right over.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that it doesn't seem like anybody's paying attention to even the slightest chance that this thing might be. And then, of course, what's going to happen, and Bill, this especially for you, is that they're going to come Tuesday or Wednesday and say, well, how come you guys didn't tell us about this? How come you didn't warn us that we were going to have all of this happen or whatever? You bang your head against.
Well,
the
it's Joe.
Yeah.
First of all, I solved, and you and I have had this conversation. I don't watch anybody I haven't for years. The last thought in my mind at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening is, let me go to the television set and turn on because I have to see so and so do the weather. I couldn't tell you who's doing weather at what stations at what time. I mean, I know who the big cheeses are. Of course, Lonnie and I are very close, as I've said. And
Lonnie was on the national news tonight with.
that it's good that he gets some air that way. He gets a little experience, and of course Lee Goldberg has been begging to get on this show, and I just, I'm not having it. It's just not happening. Actually, I've invited Lee, so one of these days we'll have Lee on too. Everybody, I'm kidding. Okay, it's just my dark sense of humor. So
Yeah, Joe, I was going to ask if your latest payment made it in on time to get on
yeah,
for me to get on the
exactly.
show.
You better be careful because Marianne and Ginger may start to show up in the background there over on the island as that palm tree sways, or is that Gilligan and the skipper?
I don't know. Well, if it's Marianne and Ginger, that's no problem for me. That's as long as the radio's working and I know what's going on in the outside world. That's all
Exactly.
you
Well,
need with Gilligan
that's the
Brown.
professor's doing. All right. So no problems, obviously. This weekend here, from eastern Pennsylvania through southern New England down into Delaware and Maryland and Virginia, is really about the atmosphere prepping up, or as I have been referring to it, as priming up. The atmosphere priming by sending those dew points up, so that by the time when I think Sunday and Monday in particular, it's going to feel like South Florida around here, where you're going to be in the middle and upper 80s, and you're going to have dew points up in the low to mid 70s, and it really is going to, that tropical sky with the multi-level, the Q and all the different level clouds, uh, like what you have in your on your background there at the moment.
Joe,
I guess there are some
Joe,
clouds in back of me.
But that's it. I mean, there are going to be some thunderstorms running around from time to time, but most of the time this weekend it should be okay.
would you call that organized climb, Joe?
Yes, organized climb. Very good, Mr. Mayo. But right, no weather issues. Just to make it clear, because one of my biggest frustrations when doing weather in situations like this is that most people don't listen. So not our audience aside, because they're all into weather, but the average person doesn't really listen very much. So for they go on the air and they say a hurricane is coming, they in a situation like this, they think it's for tomorrow and Sunday, as opposed to the fact that we're really talking about something from that respect. We're talking about Tuesday and beyond. So the weekend is fine. There are no weather issues for the weekend.
Wait a minute, hold on for a second. Eduardo Ferrante on the chat board says, Joe, that it sounds like you and me are a mile apart on how this is going to perform. I don't think we're a mile
No,
apart.
I don't think Junior. Eduardo's a good friend of mine. Junior, I don't know. We're not. I wouldn't say we're a mile apart. I think we're still both sort of, possibly probably struggling with the fine details. I just put on the table the idea that if we wind up with a storm that moves up the coast that's just inland, I just wonder what we're gonna. I'm just wondering what we're gonna deal with, and that perhaps we'll have some rough weather for a few hours, but it's not going to be anything. Everybody's going to reflexively go to Sandy, and this is a totally different setup
No,
from Sandy. So let's be
Much
clear
different.
about that. No, we're not. We're sort of on the same page, but he might be at the prologue and I may be at the epilogue. How does that sound?
well, I'm concerned. You and I, long time ago, we would be jumping up and down with the, rooting for this. But you and I, we've gone a long way down the road now, and we live in homes. We have people who we're concerned about. We don't. The last thing we want to see, trees coming down, property damage, winds, heavy rain, all kinds of mayhem. We really don't want to see that. If anything, I'm hoping the damn thing just stays just offshore, skims our area, gives us a little bit of wind, a little bit of rain or whatever, and let somebody else be concerned about it.
All right.
Last thing I want to see is this thing go to the west of us. I don't want to see that.
Well, Bill, well, you know what? Hold that for a second, because I do have
Right.
I do have a question regarding the fact that if we do wind up with a low that is either just inland or just offshore, I want to address the question of whether there might be some baroclinic or non-tropical influences from that upper trough that we're maybe not taking into account yet. So but before we do that, I brought up the Hurricane Center's interactive map because this way at least people get an idea of the times. And David Schwartz, for example, on the chat board, his parents are down in Florida, so he was a little bit concerned with regards to the arrival times. One of the things I would just stress that if we wind up in Florida, if it winds up going up the coast or just inland of the coast, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of rain on the west side of this. The way the models are showing it, and from what I saw on some of the simulated satellites. So you'll disagree with me or not, or agree with me or not, but I'm thinking that west of the track there's going to probably be a relatively sharp cutoff of the rain and the gales. Yes, no? What do you think? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but that's
the global models weren't really showing that. I would imagine just north of the track, just because it looks like just in some of the simulations, it looks like the southern part of this thing never really gets its act together. You have a lot of convection that's on the northern side of it, and
right.
also to the western side, because when these storms when they truck northward, all that moisture gets thrown up against
that becomes the case as it gets further north. But from what I looked at down when it was on its approach to Florida, it kind of looked like the western edge of the precip shield was there was a sharper cutoff. Maybe I'm exaggerating to a degree. Perhaps I'm trying to just fine tune this too much. But gales arriving in near Miami by 2 p.m. tomorrow. Looks like they'll be up around Palm Beach around 8 p.m. 8 a.m. further north as you head up toward Melbourne and Daytona. And by 8 p.m. Sunday, we're looking at gales reaching up to Jacksonville. The Hurricane Center does keep the hurricane, barely keeps it offshore. Just kind of touching the coast in that area from Deerfield Beach northward where they have the hurricane warning up. And then it looks like a second landfall, Bill, Myrtle Beach to Wilmington, somewhere in there. And the timing here is 8 a.m. Monday, gales arriving in southern South Carolina. By 8 p.m. Monday, gales arriving in southeastern North Carolina. And then, of course, according to their forecast, we're looking at Tuesday, 8 a.m. gales to Atlantic City to Trenton is where the line is. So the Hurricane Center on their timing has this, and by this point they have it as a tropical storm again. They have this bend to the right. What do you think?
Well, I mean, as it comes farther north, sure, it'll get, I won't be a sharp bend to the right. It should be gradual. Make landfall where you said probably somewhere Myrtle Beach to Wilmington, then head up. I guess the question is, does this thing stay just inland, or does it make the right turn and then make another landfall, let's say Long Island, or eastern Long Island, or maybe I guess the farthest east I could see it going is like Martha's Vineyard. And if that's the case, then we're mostly going to see rain out of this. I wouldn't think too much wind.
No snow?
Oh, I have a friend. Every time I make a weather post on Facebook, he asks if we're going to get 2 feet of snow. I told him you have a shore house in New Jersey. You might get 2 feet of water in the street if this comes in at high tide. But that's another.
Oh, good God! You're such a spoiled sport.
There's one thing you always see also when a lot of rain falls. Let's say someplace gets like 3 inches. And the news anchor will turn to the weathercaster and say, wow, 3 inches. Now, how much snow would we have gotten out of this 3 inches? And of course, then mentally, they say, oh, well, 1 inch of rain equals 10 inches. We got 30 inches of snow out of this. Wrong. And you want to know why it's wrong? Because in the summertime, the atmosphere can hold so much more moisture when the air is so warm. You cool it down to make it snow. That atmosphere is not going to be able to hold quite as much in the way of moisture. So it's probably more like maybe you could do the calculations on it with your hypsometer or whatever like that. But it always bugs me when they always automatically convert from 3 inches of rain to 30 inches of snow in a heavy rain situation. You watch somebody. If we do get a lot of rain, somebody's going to mention that in the aftermath. Boy, well, it's a good thing it wasn't all this was in snow, right? Anyway,
I don't doubt it. But some of those dynamics in winter storms, boy, they can squeeze out what relatively little there is compared to summertime. You got to give them that much. So
right. The
uh,
puff factor, Bill.
Yeah.
yeah. All I know is I don't want snow right now. They'd be sweating to death trying to shovel it.
Somebody on the chat board suggested that they should come up. We should have spaghetti plots for snowstorms. Oh, can you imagine? Can you just imagine if that were the case? So I've got the upper air. Now I want to go back to the excuse me, what
If
I
there's meatballs to go with it, we'll take those.
right. Uh, I want to go back to what I mentioned just a little while ago with regards to sometimes there are instances when storms rocket up the East Coast and you've got deep troughs with a lot of amplitude that sometimes you can get a little bit of baroclinic intensification that goes on as the system moves further to the north. I don't. I'm kind of. I'm kind of mixed about this. The trough has a lot of amplitude, but the trough axis is fairly far to the west, and the upper low to the north kind of wraps up nicely. But the system's long gone by then. So, what do you? I'm thinking that outside of the fact that this thing is going to act as uh, the accelerant to get this thing to rocket up faster along the eastern seaboard, accelerating northward. I'm leaning against the idea that there's going to be any kind of baroclinic deepening going on. What do you think?
Well, I think there are two things to consider there. One, as you were saying that, I was trying to go on tropical tidbits real quick to see what the upper level jet looked
Well,
like.
I got it on the screen up here. I don't know if you can see it. I do have it up
Okay.
on the screen.
No, I can't. But I guess if we're in the if the storm is somewhere near the right entrance region of the jet, where so the outflow can so that upper jet can help get move that outflow along and like almost like an exhaust. I mean that could help lead to strengthening. We see that all the time with. I mean, we see that in a lot in the Gulf of Mexico. I can think of a couple of storms that intensified rapidly because of that. That's not going to be. I don't think that'll be the case this time, but it could help it maintain intensity. The other thing that I don't, there's been talk about southwesterly shear impinging on the storm as it makes it to Florida and up the coast.
Let's address that because that was something that one of the forecasters back 2 days ago was said that he was a bit suspect of that. That it might
Yeah, that's right.
it might have been storm induced. That the model was creating this shear because there was a storm there.
Yeah, that's part of it. The other part of it is when this storm's moving toward Florida, moving west to west northwest. Yeah, the shear could do a number on it or limit. But I think once it makes the turn and then starts to go to the northeast, all of a sudden, if you look at it in like a storm relative sense, then all of a sudden there isn't that much shear, and you probably have a window of opportunity before landfall as it gets close to Carolinas for strengthening.
There were really strong. I pulled up the 200 to 850 wind shear for tomorrow afternoon, and there's a strong belt of southwest winds of 40 knots or higher across the state of Florida. But as the storm pushes northwestward, that whole shear zone pushes northwestward with it. So I'm a little. I'm not. I'm wondering whether that forecaster has a good point here that with regards to the fact that this is model induced and not going to have as much of an impact as you might think.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think that was more the statistical guidance for intensity that was sort of holding on to it, not taking into account. Well, that shear is not going to stay right where it is the whole time. It's gonna move with the storm and with the upper level features that are with the upper trough that's to its west.
Well, I have the 18Z, so you can see the upper trough to the west and how the two just sort of mesh here when it's off the North Carolina coast and then starts to shoot up the eastern seaboard. On this particular run on the 18Z, and the ensembles today, by the way, the 12Z ensembles were very, very tight and went left from yesterday, so that trend continues as well. I'll bring up the the eastern U.S. view, and this is the new 18Z GFS, by the way. So, you look at. I would just like to have seen, when I see the, usually use the view where it's got the radar, where it's supposed to be what you think of the radar echoes. And by the way, we do have some showers Saturday night into Sunday morning that go by because that's the tropical air getting in here. So we're setting up for the steam bath on Sunday and maybe for some isolated severe thunderstorms Sunday evening with a frontal boundary approaching and stalling. But you could see the new GFS, brings it right on the coast, barely on Florida, just kind of rides it all the way up on the beaches. Basically the storm center rides up the beaches, comes out offshore near Jacksonville for a handful of miles until it goes back in somewhere just somewhere just northeast of Charleston, and looks like it's a shade further left here. It brings it right over Chesapeake Bay, east central New Jersey by Tuesday. Now it is slower now. It has slowed up. So Tuesday afternoon at 2:00, instead of on the old run where it was already near Cape Cod, it's now somewhere right over Alan Casper's house in Ocean County, and then by Tuesday evening it's up near Providence. So it has the GFS has slowed down. It's still not quite as slow as the European is, but it has slowed down, and the track is more inland on this run, slightly more inland than it was on the previous run. I think we get wind and heavy rain with this for 6 or 8 hours, and then it's over with.
Yeah, but
Yeah, it's
Joe,
gonna.
in 6 or 8 hours, what can happen? I mean, along with the wind and the heavy rain, again, you could bring down. All you need to do is have your power line in front of your house come down, and you're without power for a day or two. That's annoying to you. And if it does that on multiple times in that 6 to 8 hour period, a lot of people are going to be moaning and complaining and getting. I know it's short lived, but a lot can happen in 6 to 8 hours.
But no, and I understand that it's fast, but I just want to, sometimes people have it in their minds when they're thinking with hurricanes and tropical storms, and they're thinking long duration, 24, 36-hour events. That's not going to be the case. This is not a 24, 36-hour event. This is basically going to wind up being about 6 to 8 hours of rough weather when it goes by.
Right.
I don't think there's an argument here, right? We're all on the same page with that.
Yeah.
I agree. If anything, we talked about we talked about how folks will say, "How did you miss this?" I think the surprise factor, the timing is going to.
I ignore that stuff.
Well, I think that's if people are going to find something to complain about, that I would think that would be it. Is the surprise factor as far as the timing. You didn't tell us it's going to come in this suddenly and leave this quickly, or something along those lines. And
Bill, I don't know if you knew one of the real old timers who used to work at NWS when it was at Rockefeller Center, Tom Grant, a legend, really. Joe and I were good friends of Tom, and if somebody were to criticize, like one time I think it was the New York Post criticized the National Weather Service on the way they handled a big blizzard. In fact, it was the blizzard of 1983. Tom Grant went on and produced a public information statement, which when it came off the teletype must have been like 1.5 feet long, detailing chronologically from the very moment that the first watch went out till the very end, and then basically saying the National Weather Service, the People's Service, we're here during all kinds of weather.
Tom was.
You remember on Green Acres, Joe, when Eddie Albert used to do the soliloquy, and you'd hear the fife and drum in the background. You could almost hear that with Tom Grant's public information statement.
Tom was the union rep, and yeah. I'll just say that New York landlord. Yeah, he was shop steward, and New York landlords have still tremble in fear when Tom Grant used to write weather map discussions in the wintertime, when he would advise landlords to make sure that they kept the heat up under extreme cold weather conditions.
No.
He would put that in the discussions. He would just. Yeah. I remember one. It's funny, the things as you get older, the things you remember and the things you forget. But so clearly remember, right, a discussion that he wrote that said landlords are advised. This was on a blast of cold air in February where we were down in the single digits or near zero. I think it was maybe in 1979, which we had 3 weeks of brutal cold. And he wrote it in the discussion. He said landlords are advised to keep heat up under these extreme conditions. Just
we should add that. We're busy telling everybody their pipes could freeze when it gets that cold, but we totally missed the boat on that. That's a good one.
Well,
Well,
Bill,
it
if
is.
anybody if anybody criticizes the National Weather Service in the aftermath of this storm, I would strongly urge you to sit down or whoever does the public information statements and in honor of Tom Grant, just write down everything and detail everything as to how you guys handled this particular storm.
Large scale. It's hard for me to even remember the last time a large scale event went under the radar. How does that even happen anymore?
It does.
The large scale events?
Well, maybe not now, but I mean, like there was that one storm we sometimes bring it up in the winter that everybody missed. I think parts of the area received nothing, and other parts of Long Island received like 18 inches or something. Remember that? What storm was that? That was in December.
Yeah, but
1992 or whatever.
Yeah, well, I'm saying, when was the last time a large scale event was missed? I mean, you really have to go back a long, long time.
Yeah.
To find that, and everything is out on the table days and days in advance. So it's hard for anything to sneak under the small scale's a different thing, but people still don't seem to get the idea that summertime thunderstorms are not. It's not often that you get widespread thunderstorm activity around here. Most of the time it's scattered. So some days you get them and some days you don't. Sometimes you're like me and you live under a boilerplate
Exactly.
where they happen all around you.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
I always think of the Blizzard '96. I mean, that one was, you could see that coming for a while. I guess there were some models that had it 5-6 days in advance. I think the European back then was nailing that. Then it kind of went underneath the radar. But I remember that I think it was like what day is the week? It was like Sunday and Monday of the following week. It wasn't until the Friday before that it looked like it was really going to be a sure bet for the Mid-Atlantic to the Northeast and not just pass like to the south. And then everybody went nuts about it. Maybe this is the same type of situation.
That Friday, the Friday night before the blizzard of '96. Remember the old AVN prog, the 60-hour spectral model prog? And that actually had the whole thing passing underneath us. And at the time, I was giving the weather to, I will not mention the name, but I was providing the weather forecast for a TV weather personality. And I said, well, this model says that we're going to miss it, but the jury is still out. But unfortunately, he only heard the first half, which is this model says it's going to miss. And he went on that night and said to everybody, this storm is going to miss us on Sunday. And like there were two women behind the anchor desk, and one of them said, well, but what about the computers? And he just gave a smile and he said, the computers. And he got called in on the carpet when he came back the following week or whatever, like, what the hell are you?
I just realized somebody I used to work with is on the chat board tonight, June Keegan. So it's funny because June, I was actually thinking about you a few days ago. I was going to give you a call. So just sort of odd that you popped up on the show tonight on the chat board. So a big hello to you and your lovely grandchildren. They are adorable. What did Mrs. Rayo say?
Mrs. Rayo?
Was that Mrs. Rayo I just heard?
No, that wasn't anybody down here.
I distinctly heard voices.
Well, it was not.
No, you heard my daughter walking through.
That's okay. All right.
But she was behind the palm tree, so
she's making a sandcastle.
Either that or going taking the surfboard out on that surf behind you too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very clever. That's a really clever thing. Now what is that?
Oh,
Oh,
that's the halo. That's the halo that sometimes appears around my head. But
oh well, the Lord
I don't know
giveth.
what that is. There's something in back
No,
of me that when
you're chroma keying. I have the same thing with
yeah, that's right.
mine, with my background. You so what?
There's something up. There's something up on the wall there.
Now you were
Um,
able. So Joe, just so you know, Bill did this on. He's on Zoom, obviously, with us. So he was able to put his own background on that. So you're able to put your own background on yours too. You know.
I understand.
Not that we don't love seeing all your your the plaques and everything on the wall, because they do look very nice.
Well, I could always put something behind me,
No,
a
I'm just
comet
saying.
or a shooting star or whatever.
I'm just saying. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Hmm.
So, William, what do you think? This is we're on a we've been on a record pace here. So this is the ninth named storm, and we beat the record by when this storm was named by a good a good number of days. I think August 2nd was the old record. So we, if we wind up with the J storm, that will also soon. That will also set a record. Where do you think we're going now as we're heading into August and September? Are we still going to maintain? Do you think we're still going to maintain this record setting pace, or are we going to maybe see it shut off for a little while?
that's a good question because I thought it was going to shut off once this storm got by us, and now I look. There's Tropical Depression 10 out in the far eastern Atlantic. There's something in between them that's going to sneak up behind Isaias. It'd probably just be a tropical depression if you believe the
Right.
global
Well,
models.
all the models seem to spin up something on the tail of this hurricane. The one in the in that part of the Atlantic, that's already moving northward, isn't it?
Which one? The
Tropical
one in the
depression.
middle?
No, Tropical Depression 10, the one that's out that's near the Cabo Verde Islands. Wasn't that already
Yeah,
moving northward?
I think so. I didn't pay much attention to it. I just saw in the outlooks they didn't really have much of an
Oh,
area of
hold on.
concern
I didn't
for it.
even see that they made it a depression, but I guess yes, they did.
Yeah, 10.
I wasn't paying attention. Tropical depression forms in the far eastern Atlantic. The advisory 8 o'clock CVT time. What is CVT? What is
Cabo
CV?
Verde time.
Oh, Cabo Verde time. 15.9 north, 20 west. Top winds 35, moving north at 9. So just for laughs, I just want to see what they're doing with this.
I wonder if it's even going to last that long.
There's no coastal watches or warnings up at this time.
Morocco's thinking about it.
Let's bring it. Yeah, I mean they actually make it a tropical storm overnight, only to take it back to a depression and move it just north of the Cabo Verde Islands, and then they turn it westward and they dissipate it. So that, at least that's what's supposed to happen in theory. I'll
You
show
know,
everybody on the map because you don't really get to see maps like this too often. So I'll bring that map up full screen, and you can see that's Tropical Depression 10 way out, and we are talking way out.
this is going to be the sixth time, going back to 1984. This is going to be the sixth time that Josephine has been attached to a tropical cyclone. Poor Josephine has never had a chance to,
Never made a name for herself.
flex her muscles and I'm getting tired of Joe. I like Josephine, the name, but I mean, like every 6 years, this name comes up and it never amounts to anything in terms of a hurricane or a tropical. Although in '84, I remember we had a Hurricane Josephine that was supposed to turn away from the eastern seaboard, except it kept coming closer and closer to New Jersey. And I think for a short time, New Jersey actually went underneath a hurricane watch. And then at the last moment, the thing just turned away to the right or to the east, and that was that. But
by the way, 8 o'clock position on Isaias or Isaias. 22.9 north, 75.9 west, moving northwest at 15. Lowest pressure now 987 millibars. So pressure has been it looks like the pressure's been falling at about a millibar an hour all afternoon and into this evening. Top winds are back up to 80 miles an hour on this particular advisory. And I'm just going to check. I'll bring the recon up here, and then we'll go do a little Briller Jeopardy. And looks like he's having some graphic problems on Tropical Tidbits with the recon, so I can't really read it very well. It's must have taken a bad frame or something. But anyway, all right. So let me bring up. Hang in there, Bill, because we'll do a little. We do a little Briller Jeopardy here, or the chairman.
All right. I did want to throw in one more tidbit about where I think the season's going at.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
this.
I'm sorry, I forgot. We got sidetracked. Go ahead. So go ahead and talk about the season.
You know, it's I don't really like looking. I'll tell you, the European long range guidance has been fantastic at least picking out.
I know you've messaged that to me a few
areas.
times.
I mean, if you looked at it in the middle of July, you could have anticipated a tropical cyclone coming close to the East Coast. It's been that good. With Hurricane Michael a couple of years ago, it was good with. In a few instances, it's really done well at that. I mean, it's not going to tell you that there will be a hurricane that's going to go to this. It's going to be this intensity. It won't give you those details. It just sort of gives you the big picture where they'll form. And what I see long range is. We're kind of gonna. It looks like we're gonna just continue with this. It may shut down for a while. But I think once we get to late August, early September, I'm seeing. It looks like there's just a subtle hint that the Florida and the Southeast Coast are going to have more to deal with as we get in that time frame.
Okay, and we won't hold you to it. No guarantees from the management. So, ready for a little Briller Jeopardy? The chairman. Taking a little time off, but he left me some questions. So, Mr. Rayo, and some of this is in honor of your birthday coming up, which is when? Sunday? Sunday. Okay, so these are all sort of related to this. And Bill, you're part of this as well. So, the first question is, what is the normal high and low in New York City on August the 2nd?
Mm-hmm.
Price is Right rules.
I would say the normal high would be 83, and the normal low would be 67.
William?
All right. 84 and 69.
The answer is 84 and 71.
Really? That warm?
That's what he says.
Okay.
Question 2. What was the highest and lowest temperature ever on August 2nd?
I should know that. In fact, it's funny. I don't know the exact temperature, but I think I know the year, 1975. And I think it was, I don't think it hit 100. Maybe it did hit 100. I'm going to say 100 on August 2nd, 1975.
William?
Oh boy, this just complete guesswork. I mean, I wouldn't know the date. I would think the high is probably 100. The record low maybe 57. I'm just grasping at straws there.
Oh, very good. So 100 is the record high. So both of you got the number, but I wouldn't expect you to get the year. Although Joe, the year is actually not too far from your year. 1955 was the 100. 58 was back in 1924. Okay, on your birthday in 1999, this was the last day of the second longest heat wave in New York City. How many days was that heat wave?
I'd have to be like 11. I'd say 11 days.
Whoa! You don't even get a chance to answer, Bill, because he hit that on the nose. So you know what? There's 2 more questions here. I just realized that he did send these to actually ask you these questions on your birthday. So I will save the other 2 for Sunday.
I have some questions to throw at you based upon my natal day. So
right.
we'll hold off on that.
Good. So I guess we can wrap it up here at this point. Let me just check the chat board really quick, see if there's any additional questions. Let's see. Oh, my friend June and Christina Petey are now talking to each other because apparently they know each other. So this is too funny. But No, not seeing any questions. I did pick up on a few of them before. If we missed your questions, don't worry, because Joe and I will be back tomorrow at some point during the day to update you on Hurricane Isaias or Isaias. And Bill, thanks as always for being on the show. You lend a very good perspective, and we love having the Weather Service perspective in all of this because Joe and I coming from TV land and radio land, so it's I have a tremendous amount of respect for the work that you guys do there on a daily basis, and you do
Oh,
you do you do a
likewise
great job.
too. Likewise too.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And as you know, you always have an open invitation. All you have to do is just message me, make the check payable to me in cash, and you can be on the show anytime you'd like. Only
We
kidding,
got
I'm not
to
the check part.
when we're done with these hurricane problems and that, we got to have Bill on, and we together we just got to bounce. I didn't realize this until for a couple of years now. I've been a member of the Honeymooners Facebook fan club,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
and all of a sudden one day, look who shows up on the Facebook Honeymooners fan club, but Bill Goodman. And now every time I talk to him, I have to throw in a Honeymooners line.
Yeah, I'm rustier than I should be. I haven't been watching too much, but yeah, for my friend, it's yeah, a couple of good friends of mine are on there too, and I was surprised to see. Well, there's more than one honeymooners group. Take your pick. There was one that was actually I don't know, it was being run or by somebody who I knew right here in Center Reach on Long Island. Someone I was friendly with. So
I was a member, Bill, back in the early '80s of Ralph, the Royal Association for the Longevity and Preservation of the Honeymooners. And believe it or not, if you know anything about Long Island, CW Post, 10,000, I repeat, 10,000 people showed up one weekend at a honeymooners convention at CW Post College. I mean, like, if you could imagine people just like walking around dressed like the chef of the future, it was crazy. But I know one thing you and I are going to be saying sometime either Monday night or Tuesday, Bill. Whoa, it certainly looks like rain tonight.
All right. This show is, by the way, will be available as a podcast at about 9 o'clock Eastern time. So if you want to put it on your phone, listen to it off your phone, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and a whole bunch of other podcast sites, so that you are never more than a click or two away from the Joe and Joe Weather Show. We'll see you